God on the Move.
He'd been a really active member of a church, and this life had got so challenging and difficult, and sort of mental and physical health issues had really got on top of them, and they were really, really broken. And we were able to see little by little God was putting them back together and mending all these broken parts.
Scotland is the most northern nation of the UK, known for dramatic landscapes from the Highlands to many islands and a cool, wet Atlantic climate. It has about 5.55 million people and a strong national identity. Politically, Scotland is part of the UK, but has a devolved parliament and government in Edinburgh, with powers over areas like health and education, while some matters remain reserved to Westminster. Sadly, parts of Scotland also see high rates of poverty, substance addiction, homelessness and loneliness. In the city of Dundee, parish nurses seek to meet these needs. Parish nursing is a growing church-based ministry where registered nurses offer holistic, whole-person care, health support alongside emotional and spiritual listening for anyone in the community. You are listening to the God on the Move podcast. This Lausanne Movement production is part of a wider initiative dedicated to sharing testimonies of God's work across the world for every believer. And this is a story about parish nursing in Scotland. The voice you heard earlier is Kirsty Nelson. She's a servant of Christ, and this is her story.
I am Kirsty Nelson. I'm 37 years old. I'm a nurse and currently working in Dundee in Scotland. I have been a nurse for around 16 years, initially working within the National Health Service as a community nurse. I was in Glasgow, in the centre of Glasgow for a while, and then I moved to northwest Perthshire, so the Lochray area, Perth, and Gowrie, Cuperangus. And in around 2017, I was approached by a nurse who was working in Dundee at the time, who I'd crossed paths with a couple of times. I knew her and I knew of her work. And I knew she had set up a service called Parish Nursing within Dundee. And she'd asked me if I would be interested in coming along and seeing what they did. And yeah, that was 8 years ago. So I now work full time after the COVID pandemic. I really felt quite convicted that God was moving in my life in a different way and in my career. And so my husband and I really prayed about it, about sort of next steps. And it was a massive leap of faith at the time to walk away from the security of a job within the NHS and work for a small charity. So working for the Church of Scotland and really kind of focusing on work with people in addiction. So we felt we had a very clear answer. And so in 2021, I left my job in the NHS and I have been very happily employed as a parish nurse full-time ever since.
We will hear a lot more about parish nursing in a moment. But first, I wanted to understand more about the Scottish context that Kirsty works and lives in. So I asked her about the state of the church in Scotland. And since the Church of Scotland is the biggest denomination, I also asked about that in particular.
That's a difficult question because there are so many so not every Church of Scotland would be the same. So it will very much depend on the congregation, their minister, the level of outreach work that they're doing. So within Dundee, the church where I work for, which is Dundee Law Parish Church, and we're based at Steeple Centre, which is right in the centre of town. And it is such an active church, sometimes an older congregation, but they have such a love and a care for the people of the city, and they really focus on a lot of outreach stuff. So they run a thing called Connections Cafe, where they're encouraging people who have come into Scotland. Maybe English is not a language that they've learned or had an opportunity to learn. And so every Monday morning, they open their doors and they will help teach them English. And then obviously we have the work with parish nursing there as well. So I think it very much depends a lot on sort of the minister and what their focus is as well. Like every church, there's division, and sometimes those are the stories that take the headlines, and that's what the focus is on, and is on a lot more of the negative stuff that's happening. But from a personal point of view, within Dundee, there's a good sort of movement within the Church of Scotland to really get out into the communities and build connection, which is quite exciting to be part of that as well. So I am not a member of the Church of Scotland, which would be one of the main sort of churches. I attend an evangelical church, So my personal background was I was actually raised in Scotland, we would call a brethren assembly. So very, very scripturally based. No women would preach or give out hymns or pray out loud. We would always wear a dress or a skirt and always have our heads covered as women. I'm very grateful for the upbringing that I had. I was raised within a Christian family. I think almost every member of my family has faith, attends a church. And so for me, that's the foundation of the work that I do now. I put my faith in the Lord at a very young age. We believe in full immersion baptism as well. I was baptised, I think, 11 or 12 years old. And so it's really guided me throughout my life, and not to say that I haven't faltered or wandered off in my own path at times, but I've always been very aware that I have parents and grandparents and a sibling and wider family who have all prayed for me from a very young age. And so I really am very grateful. For as much as I might go, oh, I wouldn't do this or that now, actually the foundation that upbringing gave me, I have no regrets. I'm very, very blessed to have had that. And so I now go to a church which will very much have a lot of those same principles, but is more liberal. And for us, I can really only talk about our church, the one that my husband and I are attending. We are seeing a real movement in Dundee. And I don't say that lightly, because I think words like revival can be thrown about, just over seeing a slight increase in people attending church. But we really are seeing a movement. And I think your podcast is very aptly named, because I really think we are seeing God on the move here. So when my husband and I started going to our church, we were not the youngest couple, but probably one of the younger ones. I was 30, my husband was 38 at the time. And now we are very much in that mid category. We've seen so many young people coming in, young couples, young families with children. The children's work has doubled, if not tripled in size. Part of that is that we, especially in Dundee, there's quite a big migrant community. So we have seen a real growth of people coming over from Nigeria, from Ukraine, from Syria, and we are seeing them really looking for scripturally based churches. So churches where they are getting good, proper Bible teaching. And so I think the world is in a dire state just now, and there is so much tragedy and hurt and upset. But what we're actually seeing is God bringing people into his family. And so that's what for us is really exciting. And it's really encouraging as well, because I think we sometimes forget that God is still working. And I know most people listening will probably be either part of church ministries or in active churches, but sometimes we become a bit complacent in it and actually thinking God is bringing people in and from all types of backgrounds. And I think across the board in Scotland, a lot of churches are really seeing an increase in younger people attending. We're seeing a change in maybe more of the sort of heavy drinking culture that Scotland is quite well known for. A lot of the younger people are opting to abstain. They're not interested in that. And it seems to be that part of that is a lot of people are starting a bit of a faith journey. So yeah, it's exciting. Whether as churches they are getting everything right, I think is a whole other debate, and one that I am absolutely not equipped to discuss. But certainly in terms of Dundee, we're really seeing a movement which is really exciting, and we just are really praying that we will have the wisdom to really encourage these young people that are coming in and help them grow.
Those who follow European politics may be aware that Scotland's government sits to the left of the UK political centre, with a strong progressive majority on many social policies, driving what is often called a woke agenda. I wanted to hear from Kirsty what her view on this is, and how she would explain that of all things, very conservative churches see an uptake in attendance.
I would say it's not just a Scotland issue. I think the world in general is becoming very liberal, isn't it? And we're having to have conversations that even 10 years ago we probably would have laughed at. So we could probably skirt around naming issues, but certainly things to do with transgender, to do with especially a lot of the LGBTQ stuff as well. And Scotland does seem to want to pave the way with being, we're very open and very inclusive, and we're here to give everybody rights. I would say as a woman, that can be quite difficult as well, because I think there's some big movements, big arguments, big political debates, and it's very much you're either for or against, and in all of them. And especially within a Christian viewpoint, as part of that, you then get labelled as a bigot or transphobic or whatever it might be. And I think a lot of people also nowadays would say, well, it's an easy argument for Christians to turn around and say, oh, but God loves the sinner, but he hates the sin. But actually, that is very scriptural. And, I'm not there to judge anybody's lifestyle. And also, it's not in any way for me to say what somebody's doing is right or wrong. I think we are here to love people. We are here to support them, to help them, and to guide people. Now, I would never push my beliefs on anybody else, because faith is a journey and it's a relationship between you and God. So I will absolutely share what my relationship with God is and how that has helped me through my life and what it means to me now. But I'm probably trying to focus too much on how to word this properly, but in a way that people will understand as well. I'm not afraid to talk about what my views are, but I think what I'm trying to go over is, why should that matter to other people? Because whether you have a different faith to ours, or whether you have no faith, whether you are transitioning or you're coming in and you're non-binary, while I might not live that lifestyle, while I might not necessarily agree with that lifestyle or those decisions, I will still love you and I will still show you that same love and kindness that Jesus showed to every single person that he met, whether it was the woman at the well, whether it was Mary Magdalene, the woman who touched the hem of his garment. You look at his disciples, he didn't pick perfect men to surround himself with. The Bible is full of people who made different choices, who lived the life that the Lord would have challenged. But at no point did he tell them to not come in or to not. He sat down with them, he broke bread with them, he shared a meal. He went out his way to love them and care for them, to show them kindness. And so that is what we try to embody in our work. But it can be very difficult because everybody will criticise. And if you are not sort of towing the current popular view, then you're seen as just completely opposing it and standing against it. And you will very quickly be labelled something, because we like to put a label on people and on their views and their beliefs. And sometimes we just have to accept that, because we're not actually meant to be super comfortable in this world, because we're not meant for this world. So I think as Christians, we need to be okay with the fact that some people will just not like us because of our views, but that's still not going to change the way that I will act toward you, and you will still be welcome into our space, and you will still be welcome to come in and share a meal with us. And that's okay. You might not like us because of what we believe, but we won't change our view on that. It is, and I think as Christians, that's very difficult, because we want to be accepted by the world, but you also don't want to be labelled. And I think we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable in the world, because otherwise we then are going to let biblical principles slide. So we have to decide, do we believe the Bible in its entirety? And is that how we're going to live that out? Label me what you want, but first and foremost, I'm a Christian, so I'm going to follow Christ. I am a sinner. I am not a perfect person in any world. I make mistakes. I'm quick sometimes to anger. I can be very sarcastic. I sometimes have a bit of misplaced humour, but I'm saved by grace. So I know that no matter what happens in this world, actually I'm meant for a heavenly home, and that's fine with me. I'm more than happy I'll do my work here, but I should be setting aside sort of the things of the world and focusing on that. So I have a job here to do. My job is serving God in whatever remit he sees, and at the moment it's within parish nursing. So I can just hope and pray that he equips me for that and gives me the wisdom to deal with some of these situations that comes up, and to speak about the uncomfortable things, and to deal with the backlash that might come from that as well. So yeah, it's a challenge and it's a difficulty. So we have to just keep going.
Kirsty's job is serving God in whatever remit he sees, and at the moment it's within parish nursing. As promised earlier, we'll finally hear more about that. In her response, Kirsty mentioned Helen Wordsworth. She's one of the Lausanne catalysts for health and recently published an article about parish nursing, which you can find in the podcast description. But now, let's hear from Kirsty.
So parish nursing is a really unique job. It is person-centred, holistic care, which is caring for somebody, body, soul, and mind. Every facet of a person, not just an ailment, an illness, an injury, but looking at every single part of them as a person, their life, their social circle, family circle, but very much having the person at the centre of it. And all of that is based within a church. And not as in we all work out of church buildings, but as in we have the backing of a church. So we have links to them or however it might work. I cannot and will not speak for every parish nurse because there are loads and we all work in very different ways. So the whole idea is you are looking at the needs of your community and you are able to meet that need in whatever way that might be. I am very fortunate because I am one of the few parish nurses who works full time and I am paid. Most parish nurses will work 1 or 2 days a week on a voluntary basis. And I think I'm also one of the youngest. I don't think I'm the youngest anymore, but I think I'm one of the youngest parish nurses as well. So I feel triply blessed that God opened this door for me. So I'll not go right back. I don't think I would do it justice to give you the history, but it was first established in America and then Helen the Wordsworth brought it over to the UK and there was a core group of nurses who then kind of took and it's just grown. So parish nursing in Dundee has been established since 2008 and I've been involved since 2017. So it's a well recognised service within the city of Dundee. The work that we do is very much centred around substance use, alcoholism, homelessness, and domestic violence, criminal justice. So all the really good stuff that Dundee's known for, that's where we work. So we are based right within the city centre. We are walking distance to all of the major hostels. We're on every direct bus route and we are known by just about every service, I think, within the city. So the groundwork, it was established by Barbara McFarlane, who was a nursing lecturer at the University of Dundee and was looking to retire. And I may get this wrong, so apologies to Barbara if I do not tell this entirely correctly, but she had been looking at ways where she could use her nursing and all her knowledge and skills in a way to help within their church sort of area. And I think she was sitting in church one day and she kind of felt someone tap her shoulder and say to her, "Have you heard about parish nursing?" And so she turned around to say no to the person and ask about it. And the person had either up and walked away or whether it was God placing a well-timed voice there. She's not quite sure, but basically she went and looked into it and got in touch, I believe, with Helen. And so Parish Nursing Dundee, I believe, has been on the go as maybe one of the longest running services within the UK. And we are a jack of all trades type of service. So we particularly do not do a lot of clinical work, as in sort of dressings, wound care, that sort of things. We do a bit of everything else. So we run 2 drop-ins within the week. So on a Monday and a Thursday, we open the doors for 2 hours and we serve lunch. So it's about food provision, sitting people down with a hot meal and then them having a packed lunch that they could take away with them, essentially. And during that time, you have a captive audience, but we encourage our team members and our volunteers to get a cup of tea and to go around and sit and talk to people and build connection, build relationships, get to know the people coming in through the doors. And then through that, people will often come to myself or Barbara and say, "Oh, you know, so-and-so has an issue, could you help them?" And so we'll go on and do a wee bit extra work. Often it's linking them in with other services. It might be referrals to the food bank. It might be sorting out stuff with their GP, with their local doctor, hospital appointments or clinic appointments to see the substance use nurses, whatever it might be.
Before we continue with this story, I want to let you know that you can now join the God on the Move community on the Lausanne Action Hub. Be part of the conversation, see exclusive content and share your own testimony. You can find the link to join the community in the podcast description. Also, if you have a story to share or know someone who might have, please contact us at podcast@lausanne.org. That is podcast@lausanne.org.
So really we're looking at where people need support, and then we'll see what we can do to help out. And so those are the Monday and the Thursday, they're sort of the main parts of our work. It's busy and it's chaotic. And I really can't highlight that enough. It is utter chaos, but we are organised and we are the constant and we are the safety part of it. And so the way we have set up the service is it's set out like a cafe. We're in the main sanctuary of the church and it's table service. So the people will be greeted as they come in the door. We take names because we like to know who people are. We like to welcome them by their name and we like to try and remember it so that we can refer to them by their name. We then have an idea of how many people are in, the sort of demographics. And also if there's people who we would see quite regularly that we don't see for a while, we can check and we can follow that up. So they're always greeted at the door. Then someone will show them to a seat and then someone will come and take their order and then bring their food back to them. So you're probably looking at anybody who comes in as having at the least 4 face-to-face interventions with a member of our team. So nobody can come in and leave without us seeing them or speaking to them or someone having a look at them. And that's really essential for us because we're not sitting doing big paper assessments like you would in a hospital setting. That's not our role, but we are visually assessing every single person that comes through our door, whether they're in the same clothes as last week, whether they look like actually not washed for a while, whether they have open wounds or been caught up in violence and are covered in bruises or black eyes or whatever it might be, or somebody comes in looking distressed or they're very under the influence of something. And then we can maybe pinpoint that somebody definitely goes and speaks to them, or a member of the team or one of the nurses definitely goes and speaks with them and sits with them. So it's all very deliberately done, but you wouldn't think so. So people just think we're taking names for a fire register. If there's a fire, we'll definitely be able to tell, but there's so much more goes into it. So it's been really well thought out and it's about building connection. I mean, really, there's nothing complicated to it. We want to build relationships with people. We want people to feel safe and to feel welcomed and to feel loved when they come into us. So it's nutritional food, like Granny's homemade soup. It's really good quality. Barbara will not serve anything in the drop-in that she would not serve in her own house. So we're making sure that people are being fed. And we'll pray with people and we're so receptive to that. And, we get to know them. And a lot of these guys, people would cross the street to avoid and we just love them. We have such a laugh with them and we get to know them really well. And we can have challenging conversations and we can talk about the difficult things with them because we've spent time and built up trust. And that's so important because often we're the only interaction that they are having with somebody in a day. So we want to make that positive. So that's the kind of drop-in sessions. And I mean, we can see anywhere between 40, 45, way up to 70 people within 2 hours. So it's non-stop, it's busy, it can be chaotic. Somebody stole 4 of my toilet brushes last week. It's that level of chaos. Took all the hand soaps because they can take them round and sell them round some of the pubs. We just have to learn to deal with it. We can't get annoyed over every single thing that happens like that. You just have to take it in your stride. Then we have 2 men's groups that run. We have a social group on a Monday and we have a recovery focus group on a Thursday. And they're both led by our peer recovery worker, Stevie. Stevie has a phenomenal story that's his to share. He is in recovery himself and he is such an asset to our team. Really lovely, lovely, godly man and just has such a love for these men who are so lost in addiction. So he will work with them in a group setting and then he'll meet with some of them one-to-one and just help listen and build connection and sometimes refer on to rehabilitation centres and things like that. So that's Stevie and so he runs them on a Monday and a Thursday before our drop-in. I do work within a women's prison now. So at the moment I have 3 women who I visit every week. They are all due for release within a year, 2 years sometimes. And again, it's about building a connection with them. We don't want these women who have served sentences of 5 years or more. We don't want them to be released into a community that they no longer know. We want them to know where the safe places are to go, to know who the people are, that they can come, that they trust us, they know us by the time they're being released. So it's a lot of listening, a lot of active listening, a lot of just sometimes problem solving, some silly things, getting new clothes. They might not have family members who could go and buy them, and source stuff, and making sure they have a mobile phone for coming out, that they're linked in with the right services for housing support and things like that. So I love that. It's the highlight of my week. It's super challenging, and sometimes working within the Scottish Prison Service can be really frustrating because there's a lot of policies and procedures, and there's a lot sometimes of red tape, but we just have to bear with that. And really, God has opened that door. He may close it again, and that's fine. But for now, we are happy to go with what they allow us to do. And we've seen some really brilliant relationships formed from that. Women who have then gone on and found local churches to access. And so that's one of the highlights of my week. And then I tend to focus on some of the more vulnerable women that we're coming across. And really, quite often, we'll find these are women who have had children removed from their care, who have been caught up in substance use, they've had a child removed, and then they've never had any sort of support or counselling or guidance or anything after that. And yeah, so we'll meet with them and we'll listen to them and we'll get them into counselling, or we'll work with them to get them to the point where they're ready for counselling. And we have two, we now have one, but we had two fantastic counsellors who were contracted to us. They both did 3 sessions a week, and that was specifically for people working with myself or with Stevie. You see that wraparound care and that person-centred care coming in. So we're able to offer things like counselling and housing support and all things like that. So they're the sort of the main parts. There's lots of other wee bits and pieces that go on. We have student nurses come and have placements with us. We've got a student with us just now for 8 weeks, so it's not just a day here and there. They have a full placement. So we're trying to really challenge stigma within medical and nursing students, trying to get them to recognise the need for working with people at the level that they are at and meeting them where they are at. So yeah, I love my job. In case you can't tell, it might not come across, but I really love what I do, and I'm so blessed that I get to go and tell people about how much Jesus loves them and what he's done for them, and I get to offer to pray for people, and I get to pray for people, and I get to talk about the Bible verses I love the most, and then I get to know them. And I've got a billion friends now, and it's just great. It's just what a blessing to have a job where your role is to make connections with people.
I was truly inspired by the wonderful works Kirsty and the others are doing in Dundee. I'm 100% convinced that this type of ministry, if done in every parish and church, would totally transform society. But I was curious to hear a real case story so that we can understand the work even a bit better.
It really is not an exaggeration when I say we see God in every aspect of the work that we do, because there's no way I could do this under my own steam. But there's just a phenomenal case where it was actually a hospital chaplain who used to work for another service within Dundee, got in touch and said, there's someone who's currently very unwell. I really think that they would benefit from working with you, or even just a visit. So I went up to the hospital, and the first visit I kind of left thinking, I'm not sure how much use I will be here. I'm not sure what I can do, because the person really just cried for the first 15 minutes. And so I really prayed about it, and really, I think I had a bit of I was very much humbled by God, as he likes to do often. Actually, it didn't matter what I thought I could do. I was there because God had something that he needed to do. And so I kept going back, and really the first few weeks, it was 15 minutes was all that the person could actually manage. They were very, very vulnerable at the time, but we persevered and kept going and started building a bit of a friendship, just a bit of this is who I am, this is what I do. And I know things are really challenging for you just now, but I'm here if you want to talk. And so we just kept going like that. And little by little, we saw this person's personality really come into play, and their confidence was being built back up. And the work of the staff and the unit they were in was fantastic. And this was someone who had just become so lost. And they were a Christian, they had made a faith, they had been a really active member of a church. And this life had got so challenging and difficult, and sort of mental and physical health issues had really got on top of them, and they were really, really broken. And we were able to see little by little God was putting them back together and mending all these broken parts. And it was a really, really long process. We are talking a good 7 months really of just continual weekly visits, working away, getting to know them, and then they were able to go back out into the community, back to their home, and we had just enjoyed that friendship with the person so much that we kept it going. We kept in touch. We'd meet for coffee and chats and things, and I didn't do anything, and I'm really actually not being humble in saying that, but I literally the only thing I did was turned up. We got a phone call and asked to go. We turned up. That was it. Prayed about it. And God was like, keep turning up. You need to keep going. That's all I need you to do. Don't need you to do anything else. Don't need you to problem solve. I don't need you to fix anything. I just need you to turn up. And that consistency, and that I said I'm going to be there, so I'm there. And now the person was a massive activist in their area of work years ago and had let everything slide. And latterly, we've been able to support them to be a keynote speaker at big conferences and to go and do stuff with government bodies and various things. And again, we have done nothing other than offer a lift or sat with them or gone with them, attended with them. And so for us, somebody who couldn't make eye contact, couldn't sit in a room with you for 15 minutes without being so overwhelmed by their emotions, to God having completely wrapped them up in his love again and gone, do you know what, you can do this. Look at these people that are now in your corner. Look at these people who are now here for you. And all we had to do was turn up. And I think that was a really important lesson for us, that actually we overcomplicate sometimes the work that we do. And I think, I know parish nurses across the country will agree with this, that often we just need to be there. It's not about the intervention. It's not about the wound care. It's not about the words of wisdom. It's the being there. Because people know that they can come to you, that you're a friendly face, hopefully, that you're there to just show a bit of love, a bit of kindness. You're often there with a hug and just an ability to consistently be there for a person. And I think we lose that in the world that we're in because everybody's so busy and everything's so frantic. And that's where parish nursing comes into its own. Health services across the world are at breaking point. They're underfunded, they're understaffed, they're overmanaged. There's so much red tape and policy and procedure that really what nurses would love more than anything is to sit with their patients and get to know them and find out what's important to them, what makes them tick. Who have you got in your corner? What's your housing situation like? Have you got anybody at home? Oh, you've got a dog, you've got a cat, oh, you love animal or whatever, but we're so time pressured now. Everything has to happen yesterday, and everybody's clock watching and we've always got somewhere to go. But for us, if all I do in a full day is sit with somebody while they're working through something themselves, or I'm there to help them talk through an issue, or my women who are being released from prison, sometimes they need to just talk about how awful the prison system can be at times. It's not what I can do, it's what God can do through me. And that's how he's shown his love to these people, is he's going, look, here's a person, they're there for you. So it's not like a massive, big revelation story, but actually that's where God works in the small things, the quiet moments, the times where you think no one else is there or no one else understands. And that's important. That's what we need to tune into at times, that it's the small things that can make the biggest difference, really.
It reminds me of the story of Job in the Bible. Every time I read it, I'm struck by the approach his friends took. Yes, their theology is questionable to say the least, and generally, they're clearly not the heroes of the narrative. But at the end of chapter 2, from verse 11, it reads, When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was.
When you're going through a trial in life, sometimes the last thing you want is for someone to come in and tell you what you need to do. Sometimes what you want is someone to just be there and just sit with you while you process it. And some people are called to do really complex things, okay? But I think if we're taking things right back to basics, if we're looking at how can we be a good Christian influence in the world, then we need to live like the Lord did. He sat with people. He didn't segregate them. He didn't put them into different categories. He loved everybody. You know, he gave everybody the time and attention that they required at that time. They might have thought they needed different, but he gave them what they required and what was needed. And I think for us, if we uncomplicate things and go, okay, what can we start with? Well, actually, I can sit down, I can make you a cup of tea, and I can listen to what's going on. Then we can maybe start working through stuff. But actually, let's just have a chat. And I think it's important as well that we'll share parts of our life. I'll talk about the difficulties that we've gone through. And, you know, my husband's in recovery. My husband was a heroin addict for 20 years. And we'll talk about that. We're really open with people. We've got nothing to hide with that. God saved them. You know, it was a phenomenal thing to see the change in his life. But because we're willing to be open and honest with people about that and about the challenges we face and different things, we find that people will come and be open and honest with us because we trust them enough to share our story. So then they trust us. And it's the one thing that's a real bugbear of mine is we sometimes expect people to sit and bare their soul open to us and they get very little in return. Here's a Bible verse, you know, that might help. And you're like, actually, I feel completely raw and slightly violated because I've just shared like my deepest, darkest, you know, and actually sometimes the best thing we can do is go, oh, I completely understand. I've not had the same setback, but I've had a similar. And shared experience is an amazing tool. And I'm not saying everybody has to have lived experience. There's so many buzzwords sort of thrown about just now. But actually, we share those aspects of our life and not everything. We have very good boundaries, but I've got no issue talking about the challenges that I've had, and often it's about how God has brought me through them. And that's the thing, you're living it, your outward showing of that, people are seeing it. That's your testimony. You're there every week, you've got a smile on your face, you know, even the days where you're finding it a bit harder and you're still turning up and you're still there for the people that are counting on you to be there to open up and whatever. And they might not realise it at the time, but you've still made a connection with you. Might be slightly against their will. So they're like, I really did not want to like you, but oh, here you are, you're back for like 7th week in a row.
As always, there is so much more to say. More about parish nursing and how to meet a community's needs. More about journeying with people through trauma. More about the church and the situation in Scotland. But now, to wrap it up, I asked Kirsty to share something that's on her heart and then prayer requests so we can intercede more intentionally.
We've kind of chatted a lot around people who then are coming into churches who come with baggage, who come with luggage and a lot of, and I think we need to not be afraid of that. And this is very much a generalisation, so I know not everybody's church will be like that, but they definitely are, and we run a risk in this kind of modern world that we would like people to come in nice, tidy packages when we often are not prepared to deal with the fallout of someone who has lived a really traumatized and chaotic life. And we need to not be afraid of that. We have it written right through the New Testament and through the Old Testament. The Bible is chaotic. The Bible is full of chaotic people. The Bible is full of sinful people, prideful people, people who had trauma, people who had mental health illnesses, who, you know, made poor mistakes, who were in and out of prison. The only person in the Bible who came in a nice, neat package was the Lord. So we're living our life to be more like Him. So we need to sit down with these people. We need to get to know them. We need to show them that we love them. We need to show them that the Lord loves them. And salvation is for everyone. It's for the broken. It's for the hurt. Churches are meant to be for the broken and the hurt and the damaged. And so we need to not be afraid to kind of get our hands a bit dirty and have difficult conversations and to hear difficult things about people's lives. But I would caveat that with saying that if you have been through your own trauma and your own issues, you also need to be very aware of your own limitations. And again, that is something that often as Christians we're not very good at doing. So yeah, don't be afraid of people coming into your church. If it's saved from a life of sin, that's how it's meant to work, and so let's celebrate that. Let's give people time to get used to their salvation in their own way as well. And then when it comes to prayer, we need to pray honestly. God knows our heart, He knows our mind, He knows our intent. There's no point in keeping any of that from us. So if we are struggling, if we are finding it difficult dealing with a situation or a person or an environment, we need to lift it up to the Lord and leave it with Him. I am very much in the category of the type of person who will pray for the same thing continually, just in case he didn't hear me the first time, and just in case he didn't hear me the next 200 times after that. And yeah, so it's a lesson for me as well that the Lord knows, and there's nothing wrong with taking it to Him repeatedly, but He knows, even if it's when you're driving home from work and you've had a hard day. You don't need to close your eyes to pray, as long as you're lifting up your heart and your mind to the Lord. I think we sometimes overcomplicate Christian life at times. We read the scriptures, we study it, we're living it in our lives. We are full of the love of the Lord. People will see that and gravitate towards us. So yeah, and don't be afraid to pray for other people, and don't be afraid to offer to pray for them. You don't know who you're coming in contact with, who, they don't know that they need it, but they do. And it's been one of the biggest lessons is, in a really chaotic drop-in day, and we've got people coming in, really heavily under the influence, and to sit and say, I'd really like to pray for you, that connection is incredible, and I can't really explain it, but to be able to sit and really just lift someone up to the Lord who is very clearly struggling at that time is a real blessing. If it comes to prayer points and for things that people can pray for, for parish nursing as a whole, as I say, most nurses are not paid. It is voluntary that they come back in their own time. Pray that churches would continue to back this work and see the potential in it, and see that there is such a role within congregations for that it builds great connections into the community. And pray for us in Dundee and for the folk that we work with. We still have one of the highest drug death rates in Europe, which as a small city is abhorrent, and it's not actually, things look like they've improved in the last year. Within the last 2 weeks, we've lost 6 of our regular clients, and it's really challenging just now, and the devil has a grip on this world, drugs, alcohol being one of the things he uses, and it's really challenging and it's really difficult, and we are losing young people, young women, mothers, fathers, and it's really, really challenging at times. So yeah, we would ask that you would just remember anybody who's going through a struggle with drug use, with alcohol use, and that they would find the right people to support and help them, and that God would just guide them into that. So those would be my prayer points, and they are my prayer points every day. Just that we as churches and as members of churches would have the wisdom of how to work with people and how to manage expectations. And I always remember somebody said to me, the problem dealing with wisdom is that you're sometimes given it and then you're expected to use it. So if we pray for wisdom, we have to be ready to actually use that.
You have listened to the God on the Move podcast, which is part of the Lausanne Movement's wider God on the Move initiative, where we want to share inspiring God stories from the global church with the global church. Through listening to what God is doing all around the world, we hope to encourage and challenge the global church to faithful obedience to the Great Commission. So let's accelerate global mission together toward a vision for the gospel for every person, disciple-making churches for every people and place, Christ-like leaders in every church and sector, and kingdom impact in every sphere of society. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow us for more.